The CRBN Trufoam Genesis just released, perhaps the longest awaited pickleball paddle ever, and I'm here to tell you all about this very first Gen 4 paddle on the market, including whether or not it lives up to the hype. As always, CRBN did send me this paddle, but they don't get to preview this video and I can say whatever I want. And if you'd like to help this channel out while saving 10% off of this paddle, you can use the code PICKLEBALLBLAST over on the CRBN website. So what's different? So CRBN has been working on this paddle for quite a while. While everybody else was launching Gen 3 power paddles, CRBN was sitting there patiently perfecting something that is entirely new to the industry, a 100% foam core. Unlike most paddles that use a honeycomb core, and some of which that pair that with injected foam or other ways of pairing it to foam, CRBN has introduced a special proprietary foam that allows them to skip the honeycomb polypropylene and go with a 100% foam core. So you might be asking yourself, why foam? So there are a few benefits to a foam core, but in speaking with Kyle and the guys at CRBN, one of the main benefits is the durability. Their main goal in exploring this foam core path was to combat core crushing and make it a thing of the past. They seem very confident that they've solved this problem, and I can say not only have I not core crushed this paddle yet, I also experienced zero break-in period, another thing that can occur with paddles currently on the market. There is truly nothing else like it at the moment, and in the multiple months that I've had this paddle, I have been incredibly impressed. So now that we know a little more about the Trufoam Genesis and what makes it unique, let's take a deeper dive into this paddle, starting with the basics. The CRBN Trufoam Genesis comes in 3 shapes, and if you're familiar with the CRBN X series, you'll be familiar with the shapes in this series. The Trufoam 1, which is an elongated shape with a longer handle, the Trufoam 2, which is a standard shape paddle, and the Trufoam 3, which is also an elongated paddle but shortens the handle a little and adds a little more surface area to the paddle face. I've spent most of my time playing with the TF2 and TF3, so I'm going to go over the stats for the 2 and then I'll show the stats for the 1 and 3 afterwards. The Trufoam Genesis 2 is a standard shape 14mm paddle that has a unique T700 carbon fiber face and also includes a layer of fiberglass in the layup. The advertised static weight average is 8.1 ounces, the swing weight is 112 to 114, the twist weight is 6.75, and the handle length is 5.25 inches with a 4.125 inch circumference. And this paddle comes in at a price of $280 before discount code. And real quick, here are the stats for the Trufoam 1 and the Trufoam 3. Feel free to pause and read through them. Now let's talk about power, spin, control, and feel, all the important categories with any new paddle. But before we do that, I want to point out another super unique feature of this new foam core. You may have noticed that this only comes in a 14mm, and some of you might be really excited for that, while some others might think that you only like to hit with a 16mm paddle. So one of the unique features of the foam core though is that the thickness no longer really matters. Core thickness has traditionally been used to help dial that balance between power and control, among other things. But with foam, you can keep the paddle thickness at whatever you want, in this case 14mm, and dial in the paddle by adjusting the density of the foam. So for future iterations, CRBN can keep the same exact thickness but alter the density of the foam to release, say, a power line or a super control line, or really whatever they want, which is pretty cool. Diving into these categories though, let's start with power. I think you'll get a few opinions on this if you watch other creators, but I would put this paddle above an all-court, probably in that lower tier of power paddles. It's not as powerful as the mod or the gearbox, and CRBN was careful to definitely have this thing pack a punch without pushing the limits and risking it getting banned. And as we think about that with the mod, gearbox, and others getting banned in the near future, I think the Trufoam will actually in turn move up the power spectrum a little. And I found the power in this to be very available when I needed it, and especially when I added a little bit of weight, I could generate a lot of power with this paddle. I saw an average serve speed of 57.2 miles per hour with a high speed of 59 miles per hour, which is higher than most paddles for me. Moving on to pop, and this felt poppy in hand battles and good pop off the face in drives, but I feel like that pop disappears in the soft game with dinks and resets, which I absolutely loved. I also tested punch volleys with the Trufoam 2 and found an average of a little over 35 miles per hour, with both the 1 and 3 coming in even higher than that. Now, I haven't tested punch volleys for too long, so I don't have a huge database, but that seems pretty solid to me. Now the spin on this paddle is absolutely top notch. I feel like I was able to take a step forward in my ability to shape my shots, and the foam core definitely plays a role in this. The face is gritty enough, but the foam core allows for extra dwell time, which lets you put this crazy shape on the ball, helping in pretty much every aspect of my game. My drives dipped hard, my drops dipped a little more than usual, and I could generate some excellent spin pretty much whenever I needed it. The touch and feel of this paddle is super unique, and I will do my best to describe it, but I really feel like the best way to understand it is by hitting it. So the paddle feels dense and muted, which I think is a bit deceptive, making it seem like it's not generating a ton of power when it really is. It's a slightly heavier paddle, which provides good plow through, and yet for a pseudo power paddle, I found my soft game to maybe see the biggest benefit with this paddle. My dinks were super consistent, and I felt like I could reset and drop almost anything more consistently than usual. Along the same line of thinking, I really like the sweet spot on this paddle, and in particular, the Trufoam Genesis 2. While I certainly still missed shots, it was rare that I felt like I had a straight up miss hit. And I have no specific stats to back this up. I've tried to explain it to a few other reviewers, but I almost felt as if there was a very small area that was like an ultra sweet spot. Like if you get the normal sweet spot, you'll have this predictable shot that you can set out to create. But every now and then, you hit this perfect shot or this perfect spot in this ultra sweet spot, and you see the ball just rocket off the face, dip hard, almost catches you off guard how good your shot is. Now the speed of these paddles might be the biggest adjustment for most people because they do have some higher stock swing weights, which you will only add to if you add weight. But after a couple sessions, I no longer really noticed it at all. But I will say this played a big role in me generally reaching for the standard shape Trufoam 2. Standard shape paddles, as you might know, are not usually my thing, and I was almost certain I'd prefer the Trufoam 3 as I preferred the Carbon 3X over their other shapes. However, the Trufoam 3 definitely had a bump up in swing weight and was the highest of the three shapes. Now, I've since been able to adjust to the 3, and I'm probably now splitting my time pretty evenly between the 2 and the 3. But if you're coming from a very light paddle or know you like a really light paddle, then I'd definitely go with the Trufoam 2. With all that said, despite a slightly heavier paddle with a higher swing weight, in game, I didn't really notice it too much after that adjustment period, and I don't feel like my hand speed at the net decreased too much either. So now, who is the new Carbon Trufoam for? First and foremost, I think any pickleball enthusiast is going to want to pick one of these up because it really is the first of its kind on the market. So if you're like me, you like having a new shiny toy and keeping up with the technology of the sport, then this is kind of a no-brainer. I think this is also for anybody who wants perhaps the best spin on the market and relies heavily on shaping their shots to win points, or maybe wants to. And while I can't speak to this specifically, I know Carbon wanted this paddle to replicate a tennis racket with that increased dwell time and flex, so it sounds like an ex-tennis player might really be drawn to this as well. On the flip side, I think if you are sensitive to heavier paddles or ones with a higher swing weight, you might not like this paddle quite as much, but I still think it would be worth testing it out if you can get hands-on with the unique feel of this paddle. And of course, the price of this paddle might also be prohibitive to some. It's in line with other top paddle makers, and in any industry, you definitely pay more to be an early adopter of new technology. Pickleball is no different. And while we will likely see other companies try to replicate this down the road, I don't know how long it will be before it's done so at a significantly lower price. Plus, with the durability aspect of the new foam core extending the life of the paddle, you will get more bang for your buck. So I've been playing with the Trufoam Genesis for a few months now, just counting down the days until you all can get one in your hands as well. I love that Carbon is shaking up the industry and leading the crowd in what is another step forward for pickleball technology, and I expect the Trufoam Genesis to stay in my rotation of main paddles for a very long time going forward. If you found this video helpful, consider subscribing, hit the like button, leave a comment down below if you have any questions, and thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.